Yeah, he's got a number of books.
Okay.
He was really interesting. Go.
Oh, yesterday
Oh, it's coming.
These are mints. So yes.
Okay, we're gonna get started. Hello, everybody. My name is Jackie McGarry. I am the adult specialist here at Schlaffler St. Louis Public Library. Thank you for coming out. This is the fourth Left Bank event I think we've had in the past couple of weeks, and it's always good to see people coming out. We're really excited to use the auditorium again. I just wanted to let you know that we have a lot of events coming up here at the library. I'll tell you about that after, so we can just get this started. But now I'm gonna hand it over to Shane Mullen of Left Bank Books. Thank you for coming.
I am so happy to be back here at the Schlaffler branch of the library, and I'm happy to work here as well. So thank you all so much for joining us. For those of you watching virtually, hello everyone. We do have a virtual audience this evening as well. If you are in person, you can just raise your hand, ask a question for the audience Q&A. If you're watching virtually, you can type in your question as a comment, and I will ask that for you when we get to the audience Q&A. We do have a lot of programming planned for, what month is it? It's now May. So we have a ton of May events planned, both in-person, virtual. Fingers crossed, we might be announcing an event with the fabulous Jenny Lawson, who blurred this book. So she will hopefully be joining us virtually in just a couple of weeks. I found out, I think tomorrow, if that's like, so don't tell anybody yet. That's our secret. But we just hosted John Searles, who is one of my favorite authors as well, who also blurred this book. So we are in fantastic company with some of our events. And if you love this book and love Wade as much as I believe that you do, you might also be interested in some of our other events that we are presenting to you. So check out our event calendar online at left-bank.com. And now I would love to tell you just a tiny bit more about this book. I'm just going to read a blurb. I think that's all that you need to hear, other than what Wade is going to tell you, because if you are still on the fence about how fantastic this book is, this blurb will tell you what you need to know. It is from #1 New York Times bestselling author Jenny Lawson, who I adore. She says, honest, authentic, heartbreaking, and healing. I devoured it in one day. So I love Jenny Lawson, and I think those words are just very appropriate for this book. But now, I am so happy and proud to welcome and introduce for you Wade Rouse. Wade is an internationally best-selling author of 13 books, which have been translated into 20 languages and selected as Today Show must-reads, Indie Next Picks, and Michigan Notable Books. Rouse writes fiction under his grandmother's name, Viola Shipman, to honor the working poor Ozarks woman whose memory inspires his writing. He lives in Michigan and California and hosts Wine and Words with Wade, a literary happy hour every Thursday. And we are so honored to be the first. This is the launch event for this book, so if you would all please help me in very warmly welcoming Wade Rouse for Left Bank.
So when they asked me where I wanted to start with the launch event, I screamed, "Hi, Debbie." And Teresa, we're welcoming. I screamed St. Louis. I mean, where else would you launch a book about my dad and our love of baseball and the St. Louis Cardinals other than St. Louis? I mean, I can't go to Chicago. Sorry, everybody's listening in Chicago. Here's what I always do at an event, unfortunately. I write a 15-page speech and I leave it in the car because I simply want to speak from my heart about this book. I have never in my life written a more heart-wrenching and I believe life-affirming book than this. It's been 11 years since I wrote my last memoir. So it took me some time, some distance, and some healing to get there. But I'm so glad I did and so proud of this book. And before I start babbling, I'm actually going to start with, this is what happens, an author, you get your advanced reader's copies, and then you get the pretty ones. And then you make all your notes in the crappy copy, but you want to use the real one, but I can't because everything's in here. So I want to start, I want to talk about this book and also do questions with you as well, but I think this is a perfect place to start. The game of baseball has been criticized in recent years for being too long. Too many substitutes, too many pitching changes, too many retreats from the batter's box, too many meetings on the mound, too many commercials. But it's actually a short journey from the first inning to the ninth, a couple of hours. And the outcome is often determined by little moments made from inning to inning, tiny decisions that decide the final score. It's the same in life. The last Cardinals game I watched with my dying father was filled with great hope and missed opportunities, just like life and the sport itself. Our beloved St. Louis Cardinals were playing the hated Chicago Cubs in the National League Division Series. The Cards were down to their final game. My dad was down to his final weeks. We were both down to our final innings together. Ironically, our relationship was a lot like the Cards-Cubs rivalry. Intense, heated, bitter, filled with history and yet tinged with incredible admiration and occasional disgust for the opponent. We had little in common besides baseball. My father was an Ozarks man, born and bred, and I was a city boy, a turncoat who up and ran from the place he was raised. He was an engineer. Logic overruled emotion. I was a writer. You get the picture. But I had a lot of the Ozarks in me too, which could make a man as hard and unforgiving as the rocky terrain. What did I have to forgive my father for? How long do you have? And yet I loved him. So deeply, despite all he did and didn't do for me, that my heart still flutters and moves all about my chest to this day, just like a good knuckleball. You'll likely ask why I stuck by my father, or even gave him a second, third, or fourth chance at all. So I ask you all this. Why do you stick by your favorite team, season after miserable season? It's because no matter how pessimistic we've grown, no matter what we've long endured, we always believe that a miracle can happen, that a magical season will occur and obliterate all the bad memories that came before. A true fan believes in his heart that even a terrible team can turn into a great one. Life, after all, like being a baseball fan, relies only on two things: hope and forgiveness. And that is the foundation of this memoir. I had a bookseller once say if I had a superpower, it would be hope and forgiveness. That belief that me being, as my father used to call me, a damn optimist, that everything would turn out okay. So I don't think you're going to be able to see these pictures, but I want to start here. This is my dad. This is my dad shirtless, which he usually was, wearing a Cardinals cap. And this, you probably cannot see, is the log cabin where I spent my childhood summers. I grew up in a little town in Missouri called Granby, Missouri, down south of Joplin. I spent my childhood summers every single year growing up in this tiny cabin in the middle of nowhere. It was on the Arkansas border. We used to say we could spit into Arkansas, and my dad used to say we should. But it had no TV, it had no indoor bathroom for the longest time. The only thing it had was a barely functioning radio with giant antennas that my grandmother would put tinfoil on. And it received two stations I can remember. One was a gospel station that my grandmother listened to on Sunday mornings when she couldn't go to church and she was making breakfast. And the other was KMOX in St. Louis. It always got a Cardinals game. My grandfather was a Cardinals fan. My father was a Cardinals fan. I grew up a Cardinals fan. Now, there are certain things a boy has to do in the Missouri Ozarks. One is you have to learn to hunt. Wasn't so good at that. Had to learn to fish. I was pretty good at that. And you had to learn to play baseball. I was really bad at that. But my father tried. When I was 7 or 8, my dad, every day when he would get home from work, would throw his coat down. He would grab a 6-pack of beer. He would drag me into the backyard and he would position me just so, holding a glove and throwing a ball at me. Well, that ball never made it to my glove. It would whiz by me into our woods and I'd have to go retrieve it, getting nicked up by thorns from the blackberry bushes. And my dad would say, "Get it." And I'd have to retrieve the ball, hand it to him, and we'd start again. He'd position my arm, telling me it was the glove was an extension of my body, and to just, use hand-eye coordination, which I didn't have. Growing up, I was built like a cartoon sponge. I was worse sight than Mr. Magoo. Athletics never came easy for me. And I remember one night, my dad got so frustrated with me, he took his glove and he threw it on the ground and he said, "You will never be a real man."
Oh.
And it devastated me. I stood there in the yard crying. And so I retreated back into the house, and my dad, of course, had on a Cardinals game. And he would pat the end of the couch for the dog to join him. And the dog would jump up and watch the games with him. And I used to stand in the shadows and listen to the Cardinals and watch my dad listening to the Cardinals. I started to ask questions about the game of baseball. I couldn't play it. I thought maybe I could learn something about it. So I began to ask him all about the game. And my first thing my dad taught me was how to score a card, something I can still do to this day. He taught me about ERA. He taught me about RBIs. He taught me about sacrificing a runner-up. He told me about the importance of not swinging for the fences, and it was better just to hit a sacrifice fly. He taught me that baseball was like life. It was the tiny decisions, inning to inning, that made the difference in the end. And that always stuck with me. It was not an easy go with my dad. If you're familiar with men of that era, emotion did not come easily. They held it all inside. They rarely hugged. They rarely told you they loved you. And yet it was through the Cardinals that we began to bond. I remember one night, my dad actually patted the end of the couch, and it was meant for me and not the dog to join. So I took a seat, and talking about Bob Forsch and Al Rabowski and Lou Brock and Keith Hernandez became a foundation and a common ground for us to communicate. And that continued over the next 40 years of our life. We watched and listened to thousands of Cardinals games. Thousands. Good seasons, bad seasons. And we always turned up the next year, no matter how bad the season was. And that's what I did for my father. I lost my brother when I was 13 and he was 17. If you ever met my mother, she was a huge personality. She had a career of her own and a mind of her own. Didn't play so well on the Ozarks. And when I came out, my father did not know how to deal with that. So he walked away. It's like when the Cardinals would get behind or they would lose, he would turn out the game or shout. That's how he dealt with me. He walked away. I refused to do that with my father. My mother was a nurse and a hospice nurse toward the end of her life. My mother used to always tell me never to live with regret. When I would visit my mother, we would travel the Ozarks roads over creek beds and railroad tracks. And I would go with her as she visited patients at the end of their lives, patients who had little money, no health care. And she would walk out and tell me the stories of their lives as if I desperately needed to hear them, if I was going to be the conduit for them to someone else, to show me that their lives mattered. And my mother used to always say, don't ever give up on someone. And so I refused to give up on my father. And I retreated for a long, long time, but I always came back. And Magic Season takes place inning by inning over that last game that we ever watched together. And I want to read another little excerpt for you. And I have to say this too. It's a really funny book. I know it doesn't sound that way, but if you know my father, I got my sense of humor from him. So if you know people that are funny, It's a way to bring you in, but it's also a way to keep you at a distance. So it's a very funny book. When my parents first visited us in St. Louis, long after Gary had moved in, my mom was stunned at the transformation of my bungalow, both inside and out. Gary had painted the walls and decorated. He had landscaped the front and backyards, turning them into miniature botanical gardens. We were making breakfast later that morning when my mom noticed the Valentine hanging on the refrigerator that I had made for Gary when we first met. It was a voucher in the shape of a heart, an IOU that stated, "I promise to love you for the rest of my life. You may collect daily." My mom told me most people see their heart as a childish Valentine's drawing, but it's actually a fist. You want someone that makes it pump faster, that makes it stronger every day. My mother, I think, was right and wrong. I've actually come to believe that love takes on many different shapes or forms to each of us. I think of what my father said to me so long ago. You will never be a real man. But isn't that a good thing? Isn't it better to be a good man? In the over 150 years of Major League Baseball history and over 220,000 games played, there have been 23 official perfect games by the current definition. No pitcher has ever thrown more than one. You would think over that length of time it would have happened, right? But think of how hard it is not only to throw the perfect pitch time after time, but also to throw the right pitch time after time. The chances are that eventually a pitcher will make a mistake. The fastball isn't on the corner, but right down the middle of the plate. The curve doesn't curve, the sinker doesn't sink. The optimist in me truly believed that a new day would bring a new chance for a perfect game. But it's difficult to navigate life in this way, feeling as if you're running across quicksand, praying every step is the right one, and hoping against hope you won't go under by making a mistake. I consider most relationships with our parents to be the equivalent of a perfect game. I know some friends who have had seemingly ideal relationships with their parents, but when you ask or dig deeper, you discover the truth. It's nearly impossible to have a perfect parent-child relationship. 23 of 220,000 games comes out to a percentage of 0.0001. In other words, it's a damn near possibility. And yet every pitcher who walks out onto that mound every single game is striving to pitch a perfect game. Just like every dad who holds his son for the very first time vows to be the perfect father. He will not be like his dad. He will make history. What is a good man? What is a bad man? What is a real man? What simply is a man? Maybe it's owning up to your weaknesses, like knowing you can't hit a curveball, or that you'll never be fleet of foot, or that, like Gary, you can never drink again. Maybe it's letting go of everything and just learning to be. Maybe it's being a better person than you ever imagined. Or maybe it's just trying to be a decent one. I don't know. I don't think I'll ever know. But I do know love. All its beauty and horror, all its tricks and wonder. I know because I waited my entire life to find it. I searched for it, like I used to do diamonds when my parents would take me to Arkansas gym fields, and I would dig in the dirt all day long as though my life depended on it. I lost a brother, a mother, nearly my entire family, and yet here I sit watching a game with my father and my husband. And I know love is not shaped like a heart. We've had it wrong all these years. Love is shaped like a baseball. It may seem as round and as easy to toss about from one person to the next, just like an infielder warming up before a game. But it isn't. Love comes right at you, pitch after pitch, inning after inning, game after game, season after season. Sometimes it's a fastball, sometimes it's disguised as a knuckler, but most often, love is a curve. You don't know where it's going. Sometimes you'll miss it badly. Sometimes you'll foul it off. But sometimes you end up getting a mighty swing at it. And if you make contact, you're not lucky. You're damn good. Because you never took your eye off it from beginning to end. This book changed my life. It was about finding healing and catharsis and believing in someone that often didn't believe in you. What do we want most in our lives? What do we need most in our lives? We need love and we need acceptance. And we don't just need love, we need unconditional love. And what is unconditional love? It is love without conditions. It is love without someone saying to you, I will love you if. I will love you, but. My mother taught me that unconditional love is the hardest thing in the world to give and to receive. And yet the only thing that can set us free. My father, despite everything we went through in our life, had unconditional love at the end. He taught me the ability of a person that can be so different from you to do a 180 in their life, to become a person you never dreamed that they could become. It is like baseball. Teams screw up. They make mistakes. And what do we have to do? We have to forgive them. We have to let it go and we have to move on. And my father is the one person in this world that proved to me, if we don't give up on someone, incredible things can happen. And they do. I'm going to do one more quick reading. I'm going to take questions, if that's okay. Hold on. Got too many notes going on here. Sometimes I make decisions on the fly on what I'm going to read. And that's what I'm doing right now. Can you tell? I'm a person of faith. I'm often chided for that by my intellectual friends, ones who need an explanation for everything or can't find solid evidence that God exists. God is all around you, I tell them. Life is just too intricate, too hard, too beautiful to be happenstance. But how do you know, they push? Some things you don't know, you believe. Like if you're going to get a fastball or an off-speed pitch, if you're going to make a leaping catch or the ball is going to sneak over the fence. But some things you do. Life, like the game, isn't just happenstance. You make decisions, inning by inning, that decide the outcome. And I want to make the right ones. That is faith to me, that my decisions, deeds, and actions over the long haul matter, not just to me, but to others. And God, perhaps, is Tony La Russa, watching, calculating, deciding if he'll make the starting lineup for the next game. Am I silly to have such faith? I don't know. Many friends say it's just a way of playing the odds, just in case. But they're wrong. I must have faith. What other purpose is there for believing something incredible could happen tomorrow? The next inning will be different. My soul is a stained glass window dropped from the heavens and then shoved back inside me, shards and all. They pierce me, and I would have it no other way. For they make me feel everything, all the good, bad, dark, light, joy, pain, and I want to feel that. I have to feel that. I watch my dying father sleep. I have to believe that my family will be waiting if I do. My brother will punch me in the shoulder. My mother will not let go of me for days, telling me stories for hours at a time, no commas or periods in any of them, about folks I need to meet and how much she's missed me. And my dad, after yelling, "Land the plane, Geraldine," and my mom, because her stories will not end, will pass some fluffy cloud on a beautiful summer day overlooking Busch Stadium. And I'll take a seat beside him and watch the Cards play a game that never ends. Damn good tickets, he'll say, and the beer's free. And life's cold, how about another? I will nod because for once in my life, there's no need to run anymore, from anything or to anywhere. And the beer will just appear in our mugs, and it'll be the best beer I've ever had. And the Cards will win too. It's big. I truly hope you love this novel. I've been humbled by the praise that it's received. John Searles and Jenny Lawson are two of my favorite writers in the world, and for them to support me on my first memoir in a long, long time means the world. That said, I also want to do a quick twofer. If you're a fan of my Viola Shipman novels, I have two coming out this year. My next is July 12th, available for pre-order now. Shane doesn't punch me in the side of the head for saying that.
I think it's already listed on the website.
Good. And it's called The Edge of Summer, and it's the most beautiful cover you've ever seen. And it was inspired by my grandmother's buttons and button jars. And I know that sounds very specific, and it is. Growing up, I spent much of my childhood watching both of my grandmothers sew. They had these beautiful Singer sewing machines. And they were truly the first artists I'd ever witnessed. And they were masters at taking scraps and turning them into something beautiful, which is exactly what I try to do as a writer. Take disparate pieces and pull them together into something incredible. There was never a button that could be thrown away. If one fell off your shirt or one of their blouses, one was found to be their magic, or they were removed and beautiful buttons were put on to recreate it. It's a story about a woman who loses her mother and never really knew who she was. And it's much like I was with my grandmothers. My grandmothers, my gosh, they were working for. My grandma Shipman now it's time for me to stop. My grandma Shipman was a seamstress at a factory, and she stitched overalls her whole life. She didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. Yet when she would sew, she was a ballerina. She was incredible. And she taught me the meaning of what it was to not take anything for granted in life. So this is a book about a woman that wonders, as I did when I would look at my grandmothers, and they would look up at me and smile as they were sewing, content and happy. And I wondered, how did they get from there to here? What did they not tell me about their lives? What did they not share because they couldn't or they didn't want to? And she goes to Michigan. All of my novels are set in Michigan. It's actually set in a little resort town where Gary and I live. And it has a wonderful history about the pearl button industry in the Great Lakes, which, if you don't know, was one of the largest employers at the turn of the century. The time before zippers and plastic buttons, when beautiful buttons were created. Stunning story, I think, about finding true worth within ourselves. Today's society, what do? We Instagram, we Facebook, we make our lives much more perfect than they truly are. And we always seem to be seeking better or more in people and things. And this is a book about just finding true worth within yourself. So that's the first one. The other one is called A Wish for Winter, which I won't get into, but that's my winter book coming out in November. So he has those for pre-order. And if anybody wants to ask questions, I'll shut the heck up. And I love questions, so hit me with a few.
We do have a question from the virtual audience already. So Sharon, who's joining us from Minnesota, says, love this, it's almost as good as being there. And asks, if I remember right, instead of chapters, you have innings. How did you decide what to write for each inning?
That's a great question, and thank you for saying I'm so attractive, Sharon. I appreciate that. People always ask how I begin a novel or a memoir. Is it, a lot of writers are big plotters. They shame me because I'm not. They plot 100 pages before they start writing one. I always have to start with a big question that I'm struggling with. This was, what does it mean to want unconditional love and acceptance your whole life and fight for it, not knowing if you're going to get it? The Edge of Summer. Why do we always look beyond ourselves for things we think are going to make us happy? That's what guides me. My other big thing is structure. And I tell aspiring writers this. I feel I'm not just a linear writer. I have to have a unique structure as a way to tell that story. For instance, The Edge of Summer is all kind of around kind of old-fashioned sewing terms like bumble bunching, which actually have deeper meaning to our lives if you actually kind of study the terms. So for this, I struggled with how to write a memoir about my father. And truly, as we were watching that game and talking, and me knowing it would probably be the very last game we ever watched together, it hit me as a way, even then, that this would be a way to tell the story. You know, ending by ending over the last game, but also kind of going back and forth through our life, you know, through team history. You know, and the team's got to have characters and, you know, all of those types of things that in the Cardinals way, you know, history. My family, you know, we had the Cardinals way too. It was my dad's way. You know, there was a way you did things and a farm team, and you had to buy into that and believe it, or, you know, it wouldn't work. So I always struggle mightily with how I'm going to structure a novel before I start. So that came to me just as I was watching, but it took me a few years to get back to it. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm curious how your last 11 years of writing fiction informed your return to this memoir.
Gosh, it was hard. When I wrote my first Viola novel, The Charm Bracelet, it took me 3 long years to write it. I kept sending it to my agent. She's like, you know, writing a novel for me is very different than how I approach memoir. Memoir is how I started my career. So it's my voice. I tend to write in shorter essay form and chapters, and then kind of pull those together into a way I think makes sense, going back and forth a lot through time. Fiction is a much different animal. It is, I don't know the characters in the beginning. I have to know them intimately. The structure is, to me, much more like a roller coaster. It is a little more finite in the writing for me. But starting magic season, just as The Charm Bracelet did not come easily because I was out of that habit of using that voice. I kind of wanted to go into fiction mode or write third person or whatever it was. So it took me a while. I actually believe that now that writing, I think this is the best memoir I've ever written in my life. I believe that fiction has made me a much better writer, much better. And I think, you know, I hate saying this out loud and admitting it. I think the novels I'm writing now are much better than the novels I wrote, you know, 6, 7 years ago. I work really hard at it. And I just always want it to be right. You know, it's like any author, you launch this into the world, and I like wince every time because I love it. I narrated the audiobook for this, and I could barely get through it. I just read, getting edits back for my upcoming novel, and I cry again. My books are funny, but I'm a crier. Gary's a crier. There's a dog food commercial, we break down. There's a squirrel running across the street, and we slam on the brake and go, "Go, run!" So I went way off topic on that, but I do think together, my goal has always been to do both. And I worked hard to get that going again. I will say this, if you're writing memoir today, it's tough. It is tough to be an average human being writing about your life, because my competition isn't writers oftentimes, and I don't mean to disparage anyone, but it is celebrities. You look at the last few weeks, it's Bill Gates who has a book, it's Randy Rainbow who has a book, it's Viola Davis who has a book. So they're great, but they get a lot of the attention for these books. So it's hard to write a book that an agent knows that a publisher will want to buy and believes, I mean, I believe in all of my heart that this is a book that can change someone's life. And I don't need to be grandiose about that. It changed my life. And I believe that's what we have to believe.
I have two things. On a scale of 1 to 5 Kleenexes in reading your books, this sounds like it's on a 5 level, but in a good way.
I would say it's in a good way. It would be like your new rating system. That would work on today. How many Kleenex boxes?
Yeah, there have been others that I haven't gotten.
It's 5, but I would say they're happy Kleenex.
Okay, good. It sounds-
Doesn't even make sense. but-
How do you manage, I know you've been writing your fiction and memoirs all at the same time. How do you shift gears when you're working on, was it 3 or 4 different books at the same time?
I can only do one at a time. So I have to, when I start, I have to finish it.
Okay.
I cannot shape shift between books. Once I'm in it, I'm in it. You know, and I lose sense of time. I always joke, you know, Gary puts a rug down, I don't know it's there for 8 months. I truly don't. And then I go, how much did this cost?
The dog.
It's like, it's a ruggable, and I'm like, a ruggable is $500. It doesn't mean anything. But I can only do one at a time. But it is, you know, the beauty of things going well is people are reading books, and thankfully and blessedly my books. So they're wanting more books, but that truncates the time that I have. So, you know, the 2 years I used to have is now about 6 months. I would say the winter novel I just wrote was 3 months. And it was brutal. I love the book, and I think I went insane during the process. I mean, I lived that book, but it was, you know, 12-hour days, not counting the stuff you do like this and virtuals. And so it was, but I have to be, I'm very anal. I'm such a type A human being. So I have to stay ahead of the curve.
Discipline.
Very disciplined. I mean, it's like I always say, it's like any other job. If you're going to be good, you train. The more you do it, the better you become. I hope.
Do you have a particular environment when you're writing that you feel safe, secure? Do you have your pups have to be near you? Do you have to have certain pictures around you? You probably have a lot of your dad's pictures when you were doing this.
Yeah.
Do you have to have a glass of red wine?
Later.
What's your safe, productive environment?
My office is my safe zone. I have a nice office in Michigan, and I have a beautiful office in Palm Springs. I'm very blessed. I must have quiet. So I'm not a coffee shop public writer. You know, I always admire those people that are out. I'm like, I'm a whatever, Chuck E. Cheese writing. I'm like, what the hell are you doing that? And a view. I have to look at something.
Yeah.
So I have a mirror up. You know. So and those are 2 big things I do. I mean, I like pictures. I have favorite authors. We were talking. There's pictures of like Irma Bombeck and Dottie Frank and people that have supported me that make me feel good. Pictures of my family and Gary and the dogs are always my dogs. My dog Mabel is 15 years old, and that dog, she struggles to get up those steps every day now, and I know what's going on, but I'm always like, can I write another book without her? I mean, she's right there, and gets up to let me know she has to go potty and I need to stop, and get you out of your headspace. So those are things that I need. Flowers too. I like to have stuff on my cat. Coffee, a lot of coffee, that's my addiction. And just coffee. It's gonna make a joke. I don't think that's appropriate tonight. So I'm editing myself on the fly. It's rare.
one of your casts that you had a book in the works for Missouri setting?
I do,
Ozarks setting?
that's The Edge of Summer. That's
Oh, I thought you said that was
available.
Michigan.
It is, it's both.
Oh, it's both?
Actually, so the one thing I've been doing in my current novels is using two settings, which I haven't done. So The Secret of Snow used Palm Springs, where we go, and juxtaposed winter in Michigan. This mimics my grandmother's life very closely in the beginning.
Okay.
And a woman that needs to be reminded that although she didn't have much growing up, she's truly the richest person in the world. She just needed to see it. And sometimes you have to leave and make mistakes before you do that. I also have to say I love this too about my novels. All of my author friends are now emailing and texting me saying, why did it take a man to start using main characters that are over 40? With female characters. So all of my novels are 40, 50, 60, 70. So you're welcome.
So who came up with Wine with Wade on Thursdays, and thank you so much for what you did. That's the only way I made it through the pandemic.
Thank you.
And are you going to continue them?
It's continuing, yeah. She's, if you don't know, and you should, I do every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the Viola Shipman page. I do a literary happy hour called Wine and Words with Wade. And I interview best-selling authors, publishing insiders, but mostly it's a very personal thing that Gary and I do. We talk about our life. We try to inspire people. We talk about the craft of writing. We spent all January talking about what it means to be courageous in your life. So we do things often that other author podcasts don't do. I started it when, like many other authors, when our tours were canceled during COVID and there was no way to talk about your books or support other authors whose books were out. So it's grown. I think I was second. I think A Mighty Blaze, started by Carolyn Lovett, and Jenna Bloom was first, and then I started it. It's been over 2 years now, right? So people always ask you have run out of ideas, and we really don't. And thank you for saying that, because we started, and I remember like the first one we did, which shows the number of people watching, it was like 2. And Gary's like, I'm on my phone, so there's more. I'm like, thank you. And it's just grown like crazy. So it's wonderful to, and the beauty is, and I love what Shane's doing, these are live events. This is what's, the hybrid's going to be what continues to happen, which I love. I think this is brilliant. But y'all have become family. I mean, really, it's just amazing what's transpired. And people connect through that community. I mean, you become friends with people that are reading and watching. It's just been, it's amazing. I still get goosebumps. It's amazing what's occurred. But reading connects people.
We love Gary's costumes.
And Gary dresses up. I do a monthly office party, I call it. When St. Patrick's, Gary came as a leprechaun. Easter, he dresses as a bunny. We do giveaways and trivia, and that's Gary's a fan favorite. We'll be renegotiating his contract. So. I'm like 0 + 0 equals.
Well, the leprechaun's a little terrifying.
It's a lot of, and it doesn't look good coming off either. Yeah. So what's next? I don't even know what's next. Oh, 4th of July will be big. Uncle Sam, or what's the other one? Oh, Little Edie. Little Edie. That's kind of where we're trending. Yeah. Well, thank you all. This has been, St. Louis is my home. I always feel so blessed to return here. I see lots of friends that, so thank you all for making this launch very special. And I truly hope you love Magic Season. Order away. I'm not so subtle about pushing. I learned from my friend Mary Kay Andrews, buy my book, damn it. That's what she says all the time. She's like, You entertain them, now push them to buy. So buy away, and you can pre-order The Edge of Summer, because this will be my only, I'm not coming through Missouri, they're sending me south for The Edge of Summer tour. And then off to Michigan, Wisconsin. So if you want to pre-order, please do so now. And we'll get personalized book plates and everything here. Anything else I need to wrap up? I need to?
No, I just want to thank you all so much for being here. Thank the incredibly chatty virtual audience. You have a lot of fans near and far, and so many near. So I just want to thank you all so much for being here. Another giant round of applause for Wade.
You're like, don't show them.
No, not much. I just want to say once again, thank you for coming. By the way, as a also aspiring author, I was like sitting here like, oh, that's really good advice. So thank you for that. I just want to let you all know, we have another Left Bank event coming on May 11th.
Which one?
Nancy Allen.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, Nancy Allen.
Well,
Yeah.
welcome.
Oh my God. I'm already in June.
So check the Left Bank page or the slpl.org page for that. We also have a couple other events coming up this month here in the auditorium. We have a 55+ event on May 25th for National Senior Health and Fitness Day. That does require registration. And that is being put on by HouseFit STL. The owner is a physical therapist, and she's really good, I hear, so that would be a great event to come to. And then this month is Asian American Pacific Islander Month, and we have a staff member here who's going to be teaching a Chinese lesson. She's going to be teaching Chinese writing. She's going to give out some stuff for bubble tea. And that event is already almost completely full, so you can register for that online as well. And I will get out of here so you guys can buy a book and schmooze and all that. And thank you so much for coming. And thank you so much. We won.